I'm asking Kofi Bentil.
It is my view that it makes no difference.
I've said here before, you know the legal maxim, what is necessary is lawful. And you had a situation where things dissolved to a point, they, deteriorated to a point where it was necessary to go to a place which had more security. So as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't change the votes. It doesn't change what is on the pink sheet. There is a certain exercise that is being conducted, and it needed to be done in an atmosphere of greater security. And that is why that became necessary. But the fundamental things remain. Let me do some management consulting. See, operational strategy for elections belong to the EC. They have to do that. And my senior here says that the observers are making political statements about the level of security. I disagree with him. Look, when the story is written, you will see that the security arrangements around this election were very good. We could exclude the military. When the
All is well that ends well.
Not even ends well. We are seeing some of the problems that arose. But when the story is written, you find out that IGP Dampare did a fantastic job.
But he just made a point.
I'm coming.
At the constituency level, you had all the police officers in all the polling stations within that constituency who could go to that particular constituency to ensure that this massing up that disables the officers from doing their work does not happen.
I am making the point. The point I'm making is
they have been overwhelmed.
Strategy belongs to the EC. The police are there, but there is a certain limit to which they can operate. So if, for instance, the EC doesn't allow them to do certain things, for instance, if the EC determines that we are moving the thing from this station to that station, the police can't stop them. My point is, the EC could have and should have done their job within the arrangements. Now, management strategy, when you have the necessary know-how, you have the capabilities and the qualification to do something, and then you have the resources you need to do that thing well. If you do it, it is regular. Nobody should praise you. But if you don't do it, it is incompetence on your part. When we apply this analysis to the EC never complained of resources. They've spent over $100 million to do this. They had security arrangements, like we are saying, police were abundant. And I don't know of anything that they requested.
They spent over 100 million Ghana cedis, not dollars.
I'm talking about the whole election cycle.
Yes, the whole election cycle.
Let's not digress into
their budget was in excess of 100 million.
That's what I mean.
Ghana cedis.
Okay. Now, with all of that, when the presidential election was determined by the political parties who should have fewer resources than you, long before you did it, and then you have pockets, smaller units, parliamentary, constituency, collation issues, and then you fail to do that, and then you complicate the issues by your decision making. It is the EC that decided this thing should be moved to a certain point, which is not raising legal issues, which I don't think are legal issues. So here's the point. We need to call a spade a spade. And you know what Imani has said about the EC for almost 10 years now. There is a problem there regarding their operational strategy, and how they do their things. And it is playing out in front of us. So here's my conclusion.
Why do you blame the EC and leave out the police? Because if
the police,
it is a presiding officer at a polling station that will ask the police to do ABC for them. It is a returning officer at a constituency that will ask the police to do ABC for them. But the police is capable of telling them that this is the better way to do it. So when you say operational strategy is with the EC, and therefore what the EC requests is what the police will do, I'm not sure it is the EC that says, bring the collation to Accra to Tesano.
You are not sure. So say that you are not sure. But you just said something. That it is the election or electoral commission officers who make the determination. You just said the police can advise them about security. In your own words right now, you are making the point that the EC makes the decisions, the police gives advice. Now, it is the EC who determines whether we'll take the advice or not. And I'm telling you, check. All the major decisions were made by the EC and EC officials. When it comes to security, cordoning off that space, making sure unauthorized people don't enter that space was squarely within the capability of the police.
Yes, and the police ought to have told the EC.
If they told them and the EC didn't take the advice, what do they do?
No, the EC cannot disregard the police security advice.
Override the EC on election.
What you want us to do in Tesano, we can provide for it here. Because by doing what you want us to do differently, you are exposing us as weak and incompetent.
I hear you. See, I'm saying, for instance, the police will say, do you want more security? Says yes. We have this facility. Do you want to use it? Yes. If EC decides we will not use it, if EC decides we will not move from here, or if EC decides that we want to move to another location, the police can't override them. So look, Chief just said something. We fail to take our lessons seriously, and we keep repeating mistakes. I am saying let us put this issue where it belongs, and let us give greater scrutiny to the EC's operations. Look, I don't see why we cannot all sit and agree that this is a better way to do things. Even if the EC has the authority to decide what it will do, a lot of people can come, in the multitude of advice, there's security, and say this is a better way to do this than that. We are heading into a crisis which is entirely needless. And I'm saying, given that all the resources were available to avoid this crisis, not being able to do it reflects poorly on the EC. And this is not the only example.
The EC knows. The EC knows. And the police should know, particularly for the election task force, should know that in section 50, regulation 50 of the CI 127, forgive me, that regulates this process. It says constituency collation center is a location established by the commission in a constituency where all the results from the polling stations are brought for the purpose of adding up and declaring election results in that constituency. And before this, I had referred to regulations 33, 32, which simply say that the returning officer must assemble the results from the polling stations without counting the ballots, recounting the ballots, fill the parliamentary election results summary sheet, give public notice to the total number of vote cast for each candidate, publicly declare who is elected, request the candidates or their representatives or counting agents of the candidates, together with the returning officer, to sign these sheets. Give each candidate or representative or counting agent of a candidate a completed and signed copy, endorse on the rate, blah, 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 forward to the commission, and so on. So it ought to be done in the constituency. That's the NDC's problem.
I totally agree with you. The law says do this in the constituency. I am making the point that the decision to take it out of the constituency was not the police. It was the EC that made that decision. Now, if I were a lawyer arguing this matter, my argument would be that what is necessary is lawful. If for some reason it was impossible to do it in the constituency, and everything showed so, the security people and everything, and the EC decided that let's take it, for instance, to the EC office to go and do the counting, etc. My advice to them would be, when you finish doing that, take it back to the constituency and finish it there. Then you will be somehow in conformity with the law. My point is, the faults, the errors, the mistakes are properly in the laps of the EC. And for me, it is important that we get this right so we can avoid some of these things in future. Okay. It could not be the...
Nonetheless, you don't agree with the NDC that the collation should not be happening at the Tesano?
I agree with the NDC that collation that is happening outside the constituency is happening outside the intention of the law. But it's not over. It is not over. My view is that if it becomes necessary to do that in military barracks, do it. But take it back to the constituency and finish it there.
Some of it is recollation, meaning it's been done, but the EC itself is emphatic in saying that it was done, in breach of their law. What do you say to the EC now being accused that the same EC, when these collations were done in 2020 and issues were raised, the EC said, once the collation had been done, it cannot be redone. Anyone who has any problems, head to the court 21 days after the results have been gazetted.
That is, again, where I fault the EC. And I say their conduct of their mandates leaves a lot to be desired. When you have this kind of attitude, you create problems. Indeed, if there was a problem and EC took the view that we would take another look at it, we would go through the process again in a more transparent way, have more of your people here, have more of your lawyers here, let's do it. And this is where, even if it's done in the EC headquarters or whatever it is, the parties will agree. But when you just throw your hands up and say, go to court, okay, you create this situation where people don't trust you, and then people have a certain tendency to fight you, and in future, it plays out like it's playing out now. I think our EC should be absolutely reformed in terms of their character.
That go to court was actually what the law requires properly.
You see, you go to court when every other means of arbitration and resolution fails.
The EC at the time interpreted its laws, and it is being suggested that that was the correct interpretation, that once there's been collation, there cannot be recollation. And anyone who is aggrieved, your only resort is to the court, High Court. And the law spells out the process to be done in the High Court. So for the same EC now to be agreeing to recollation, and these recollations play out in favor of the NPP, it is being accused that it is in bed with the NPP to change results for the NPP.
You see, their history gives ground for these things. My view is that if there is collation and there are issues with the collation, and the EC properly deals with the parties and says, let us take another look at it, all right, whether you call it recollation or whatever, a lot can be resolved with negotiations. Okay, my view is when the EC shuts the door, they have a right to shut the door. Samson, if you do something against me right now, I can choose to have a discussion with you, negotiate with you, go in arbitration, try mediation, try 10 different things before I go to court. But I can also choose at the first instance to go to court. Now, when you have an EC that takes the view that anytime you have a problem, go to court, then you're not going to have these problems. My view is that the EC should be more welcoming and more prepared to listen to every party and create a situation where, don't call it recollation, but then there can be an ascertainment of the results which people are disagreeing or disputing in a way that brings them to a point to accept it, all right, without going to court. I think that is possible. But when you create this situation where nobody trusts you and people think that because of your previous actions and utterances, you are playing to one party, then this is going to happen. So I say again, the problem is with the EC. Look, they've done our elections for 30-something years so far. We all know what we've said after each election. After each, from Aferijan, we said it was bad, and then we realized it was better than the next, and then we said the next was bad, and we said this one is better than the previous. You know, it's come to time to reform our EC properly. That job should be advertised, interviews had, and the person picked.
Now,
so much has to be done to avoid some of
Kofi Adams
going forward.
And